No DQ Galaxy. We are live with a recap of Friday Night Smackdown for September 8th, 2023. Shout out to everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. I appreciate your viewership and support. We are coming off the Payback Premium Live event. We kicked off the show with a video package from Payback showing the highlights of the event. We had our first match of the evening. We actually opened with a match. Charlotte Flair and Bayley, Charlotte Flair and Shotzi versus Bayley and Io Sky. Tag team match, a match opening up SmackDown, which is fairly unusual in the world of WWE. Typically, we get a promo segment to open the show, but we did get a match. While Bayley and Damage CTRL were coming to the ring, Bayley stomped on Shotzi's tank. That's all she did. She could have done way more damage, but she chose not to. The fight got out of hand right when the match started. Things broke down. Io came off the apron with a moonsault onto Charlotte and Shotzi. Order, though, was restored after the commercial break. You had Damage CTRL working over Shotzi for a while. Charlotte got a hot tag, came off the top rope with a crossbody onto both Bayley and Io Sky. Then Charlotte applied the figure 4 to Bayley, but Io broke it up with a Meteora. Bayley got to the top rope, but then all of a sudden, Asuka showed up, grabbed Io Sky's title. Io was knocked off the apron by Charlotte, and then Shotzi took down Bayley with her DDT finisher, got the 1-2-3. Shotzi beating Bayley once again. And then after the match, there was a stare down between Asuka and Io Sky. Match was good, solid opener to the show, and we now have Asuka versus Io Sky set. There was a promo backstage with Asuka. She vowed to win back her title as Io did accept the challenge. The match will happen in 2 weeks on SmackDown. They have a loaded show next week. More on that in just a few moments. We had Jimmy Uso meeting up with Paul Heyman backstage. Now, this is interesting. Jimmy Uso wants back in the bloodline, and he feels like he is still part of the bloodline. Heyman said there's in, and then there's in. Heyman advised Jimmy to handle Styles in the main event, AJ Styles, and then Heyman said that he will work with Roman Reigns to get the family back together. Heyman then walked off and saw AJ Styles. Styles did not appreciate Heyman getting in his face. Styles grabbed Heyman by the tie, and then Jimmy Uso jumped AJ Styles from behind. I just find this interesting because Jimmy was essentially out of the bloodline. He was viciously attacked. I was there at Madison Square Garden, and now he wants to be aligned with Roman Reigns again. We had LA Knight, arguably the hottest act in wrestling right now, come into the ring for a promo, and he made a reference to Kevin Nash. He brought up how the Miz's theme song says, "I came to play," and then he said, only a moron would say, look at the adjective play, and the correct term to use is the verb play. That, of course, was a reference to Kevin Nash saying the adjective line in WCW. Now, Nash was pretty critical of LA Knight a few weeks ago on his podcast. You could check that out over at NoDQ.com if you missed it. Walter sent in a $2 super chat. Walter Cruz, he's got his new channel he's starting up, Rage of Wrestling, on YouTube. He says, loved the LA Knight dig at Nash. It was awesome. Well, I'm thinking Kevin Nash saw this and he's like, dude, I said something 25 years ago when people were still talking about it. That's how I feel he'll respond to this. He'll feel flattered that he's still being talked about on television, and he got LA Knight worked up enough that LA Knight acknowledged him on TV in that way, not a direct mentioning of his name, but just making a reference to that promo. Now, LA Knight also talked about Payback, how he did not need John Cena's endorsement. He does respect Cena, though. He was going to accept the Miz's challenge for a rematch, but then we had an interruption from Grayson Waller, who brought out Austin Theory, and that set up a match between LA Knight and Austin Theory with Grayson Waller on commentary, and it was confirmed that next week we will have the John Cena appearance, his return after missing a week. He was in India, by the way, and the Great Khali was at the show in India. You could check out a video of that over at NoDQ.com. So yeah, next week's SmackDown is going to be significant. We got John Cena coming back. Now, in regards to this match, Theory did get in a lot of offense. He had a neck breaker on the floor, and after the commercial break, he had a rolling blockbuster. Knight kicked out of that, and they fought on the outside of the ring again. Knight was suplexed on the floor by Theory, and then as this was going on, Grayson Waller exposed the turnbuckle with the referee distracted. And when they were back in the ring, LA Knight gained the upper hand. He hit the elbow. Waller got on the apron. Theory tried to do something here with LA Knight, but then Theory almost went into the turnbuckle. Basically, this little plan backfired, and even though he did not go into the turnbuckle, Theory was momentarily thrown off, and LA Knight hit the BFT, the blunt force trauma, to pick up the victory. After the match, Waller got into the ring, teased the match with LA Knight, but then slipped out of the ring. Match was fine, you know, it was pretty standard, and I do think that this is likely leading to a tag team match at some point in the near future. John Cena and LA Knight versus Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. The question is, will we see a John Cena versus LA Knight match at some point? Backstage, AJ Styles cut a promo and basically said that as long as he's still standing, he can fight, and he vowed to tear Jimmy's head off in the main event. We then had Judgment Day come into the ring for our match against Ridge Holland and Butch. But before the match, they cut a little pre-match promo. They were in Boston this week, and Dominic got maybe the loudest boos he's gotten yet. Like, you could barely hear him talking on the mic. The boos were that loud. And basically, they brought up winning a Payback and how they did what Roman Reigns could not do, and that's defeat Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which is true, although Roman Reigns did win in a singles match. The Brawling Brutes came out there, and they got on the mic a little bit, promised that there would be a banger in Beantown, and Ridge Holland said they need to be worried about Butch. Balor laughed this off, so, of course, naturally, Butch went after the fingers of Finn Balor. And then we had our match. Pretty Deadly, they're still around. There is one of the guys recovering from injury, but they were watching backstage just to let WWE fans know they still exist. Now, Ridge was using his power. He was picking up both guys and dropping them. But then Dirty Dom. Now, here's the thing. I get that the tag team champions can appear on both shows, but does that mean the whole faction can appear? This means now all of a sudden Dominic can just randomly appear on SmackDown, and Rhea Ripley, even though she was in India, is she going to be on SmackDown now? Dominic did help Judgment Day, but then Butch got a hot tag, superplexed Finn Balor. Dominic once again got on the apron. Balor took advantage. Balor went for the coup de grace, but Butch escaped or rolled out of the way. And then Damian Priest tagged back in. We had Ridge Holland tag back in. However, Finn Balor got involved, and Priest was able to hit the South of Heaven chokeslam on both Butch and Holland. And then Balor hit the coup de grace, pinned Holland in a decent tag team match. Again, standard. Rage of Wrestling sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. It says, poor Good Brothers, if AJ leaves, it's back to catering. We'll get to that here in just a second. The most interesting thing about this was the post-match, because we had Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits come into the ring, and we had a little bit of a stare down, and Lashley got on the mic and said, yes, Judgment Day is right. The bloodline is crumbling. However, it's not Judgment Day that will be taking over. It's Lashley and the Street Profits. I'm intrigued about this. Now, there was a report that these guys, Lashley and the Profits, were going to be heels, but this certainly felt like a babyface confrontation coming out there and confronting Judgment Day. So we'll see where this is going, and more on Judgment Day in just a few moments. We had the OC backstage, and they were basically goofing off. AJ Styles showed up, and he was not amused with them whatsoever. But they said that Styles should have stayed out of the Bloodline's business, and Styles said, well, they can just stay out of his business for the main event match against Jimmy Uso. And like Rage of Wrestling said, if the Good Brothers are not with Styles anymore, that might not be too good for their futures. We also had a backstage segment with Paul Heyman and Adam Pearce. They were talking. LA Knight came in and said he wanted a match with The Miz for next week. Pearce agreed to that, but Paul Heyman was not amused. He introduced himself tonight and then gave Knight a warning to knock next time. And he wanted to know if they were clear. And LA Knight had a one-word response. Yeah. We had footage shown from the Superstar Spectacle. Like I mentioned, the Great Khali was there for that event. Seth Rollins, John Cena. That's why Cena was not on this week's show. And we had that Asuka promo I mentioned earlier. She wants her rematch, and she'll be getting it in 2 weeks. We had our main event of the evening, AJ Styles versus Jimmy Uso. Styles went right after Jimmy, and Jimmy tried to cheat to win early, putting his feet on the ropes. That did not work. He went to the outside of the ring to stall for time. That's when we had Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa coming out to watch the match. This motivated Jimmy quite a bit. He sent Styles face first into the steel steps and continued to dominate after the commercial break. But Styles did make his comeback. He hit a forearm over the top rope to the outside, but He was momentarily distracted by Solo Sikoa, enough that Jimmy was able to regain the upper hand, and then Styles was sent to the outside, and I guess Solo expected, or Jimmy expected Solo to help him out, but Solo just stood by Styles, and then Jimmy and Solo started having words. Styles took them both down, took a shot at Solo, and then sent Jimmy into the ring post, got Jimmy back in the ring, hit the phenomenal forearm, and got the 1-2-3 victory over Jimmy. Jimmy struggling to get his singles career off to a strong start. And then afterwards, as I mentioned, we had more Judgment Day. Judgment Day attacked Styles, and then they offered Styles basically a peace offering, as the announcers put it, threw Styles in the ring so Solo Sikoa could get a little bit of payback on Styles via a Samoan spike. So what does this mean? Will we see an alliance between the Bloodline and Judgment Day? How does Judgment Day fit into all this? Interesting ending to the show, I will say that much. Overall, though, I think that this was a little bit of a run-of-the-mill SmackDown. I think I'll go B-. I did have some intrigue about the end of the show, and LA Knight was entertaining. The matches were fine, but it really felt like, okay, we have no major show coming up for several weeks, and Roman Reigns is gone. John Cena wasn't on this show. So, it's kind of just a placeholder SmackDown. That was kind of the vibe I got from it. Crowd was really hot, though. I mean, Boston definitely was a solid crowd, and loved the heat for Dominic. It did have a few highlights, but not necessarily a show that I would highly recommend you watch. Maybe a somewhat recommend. I think a B- is fair. Anyways, that's all I got for SmackDown. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com. Now, I will not be doing a Collision recap, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on that. So stay tuned for that. With CM Punk gone, I have suddenly lost my motivation to cover the show, but I might come back in a week or two. I'll have to see how things are going with AEW, but I will be back Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, with a new edition of the No DQ review hosted by Virtue. So hope to see you guys there. Have a great weekend. Like I said, take care. And remember, say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.